Good afternoon and welcome to Money FM 89.3. I'm Claressa Montero. It's a great honor to welcome Minister K Shanmugam into our studios for Coffee with Claressa. Good afternoon, Minister, and welcome.
Afternoon.
First off, how do I address you?
Can you call me Shan?
I can call you Shan. Thank you so much. I'm going to enjoy that. Now, Minister for Law and Minister for Home Affairs, these ministries and its policies do draw criticisms and pushback from the public. Do you think perhaps sometimes you are misunderstood?
Well, how do I answer that? Let me put it this way. You split it into, first of all, whether the policies are good.
Mm-hmm.
Second, what's the reaction in public to it?
Okay.
We don't put across a policy, we don't put it in Parliament unless I believe, that this is in the long term good for people. Okay, that's non-negotiable.
Sure.
That's got to be there. How are they received? Again, I'm, having been in in ministries now for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that you need to distinguish between a vocal group that might be opposed to something and the broader majority.
Sure.
Particularly when it comes to policies relating to law and order.
Mm-hmm.
Our people want law and order. I say to people here in Singapore, your 10-year-old daughter can take a bus and you will not worry about her coming back. Now think of which city in the world you can do that. And that means a lot to people. And they have huge faith in the police force. So let me give you an example, a recent illustration. POSPA, the Public Order Safety Act.
Mm-hmm.
If you had looked at online, you would think, people upset about it, is there pushback and so on.
Mm-hmm.
We did a survey. And we are very careful with our surveys. We don't tweak. We want to get the absolute unvarnished picture of
Right.
what people think. 75% of the people supported it.
Mm-hmm.
And we read out to them the kind of powers the police will have, including the power to stop you from taking photographs in an emergency situation.
Sure.
Right? Commissioner of Police can tell you to stop it because we don't want the terrorists to see what's happening.
Right.
And yes, in some situations, a peaceful demonstration can become violent, as it did in London, as it has done in many other places, and then these powers will kick in. 75% of the people who knew about it, and a significant number didn't bother, as far as they were concerned, the police and the government will do the right thing. Of those people who have heard about it, which was about 65% of the sample, 3/4 supported it. So you say pushback.
Mm-hmm.
Pushback is from a small vocal minority, not even the entire 25%,
Sure.
a small vocal minority among the 25%. So as a policymaker, you need to be able to distinguish between where the majority sentiment lies and where the minority sentiment lies, even if the minority is very vocal. And then again, you only do it not just because the majority support it, but because it is the right thing to do. So the answer to your question is, yes, there sometimes is pushback, but from how many people? What's the weight of those numbers? And sometimes, even if a significant number don't want it, but if you believe it is right, then I think you have to go out there and do the comms and explain to people and try and win the ground. But having said that, I think you're right. Home Affairs law more often gets comments than many other ministries.
You do have difficult ministries. As a Singaporean, as a mother, as a woman, I will be the first to say this. From as far back as when I was in school, I used to say exactly what you did. I can go anywhere in Singapore, any time of the day and night, and I know I'm safe, and my parents know I'm safe. And I've never encountered that anywhere else in the world.
Well, also difficult and yet not difficult in the sense that if you look at it in terms of the trust people have in the police force, more than 90% of the people trust the Singapore police force. You can't say that of most police forces in the world, in developed countries I'm talking about. And so in that sense, as I took over the ministries, Home Affairs again in 2015, I started from a very high base, a lot of confidence, a lot of belief in our system. There are other ministries where it is much more difficult.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure.
Yes.
You sometimes, in fact, you do have a reputation for asking difficult questions. You don't shy away from them. That might be your law training. That just might be part of your
I think
DNA.
that's putting it mildly.
Maybe it's your DNA. When people ask difficult questions of you, what personal philosophies guide you?
Everything I do has got to be guided by and is guided by one central principle. It's got to be ultimately in the interest of the country,
Right.
in the interest of the people, including answering questions. Because as I hold the position of a minister, I'm answering as a minister.
Yes.
Internationally, I could be asked about Singapore's position, about what we think when I was foreign minister. What do I think about issues between countries? Whether I answer or I do not answer is guided simply by what is in our best interests.
Yes.
And how we answer is also guided by what's in the country's best interest. Likewise, here, I don't shy away from answering because I think people do not trust you if you don't answer or if you give inauthentic answers.
Okay.
So when you can't answer, it's best that you say you don't want to answer. And when you can answer, people can tell you when you are dissembling as well. So it's best to be direct, to be clear, and that's my persona, and people take me for that. Not everyone likes it, but it's, I think, better to be known as someone who will be very clear and straight and direct, rather than someone who will try and sugarcoat.
And we respect you for that, sir. In this era of fake news, what does honesty and truth truly mean to you?
It's got to be the fundamentals for public policy and public discourse. Again, people are very smart. Politicians all over the world, I think, have moved away from truth. Not all, but you see a significant number. They dare not tell the truth to the public because of their fear of the reaction.
Sure.
But I think it's better to be upfront and open and clear with the public, tell them the consequences and try and win the hearts and minds by being direct and honest. And I read with great concern, even in Singapore, serious commentators suggesting that there can be we don't need to pursue truth. We just need to pursue alternate versions of not even truth, perceptions.
Right.
I have no issues with truth. I have no issues with facts. And I have no issues with people taking different interpretations based on facts.
Right.
But I don't think different people are entitled to different versions of facts.
Right.
And I read, it's almost like the discourses that take place in some Western countries, where each one is entitled to just say what he likes or she likes based on their version of truth and untruth.
This is funny because I grew up with my father saying very, very clearly to me, you can't have an opinion about a fact.
Yeah.
But apparently in this day and age, you can have many opinions and definitions of the facts. And that leads to a lot of the problems we see in fake news today.
Yeah, I'll put a nuance to that. If you can say these are the facts, you can have different interpretations.
Sure.
I think that's valid. And you can have alternate interpretations, you can have contrasting interpretations. But what I think is difficult is if you start saying, well, you have your version of facts, I'm entitled to create my own version of my facts,
Right.
and I don't have to justify to you what my version of facts are. And based on my version of facts, I can concoct theories. That, I think, is problematic, but that happens around the world.
Yes, especially in the era of social media.
Yes.
Because then everyone is an expert if they say they are.
Well, yeah, people are, people are entitled to their opinions. I think where it relates to public policy, you have to deal with facts.
Yes.
And you can argue You can have different and very strong opposing viewpoints on policies, but they must be grounded on some factual reality.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to actually, which is not in any of the questions I sent you, but I'd like to just say, when I was dealing with the various ministries, your press secretaries, your media advisors from both the Ministry of Law and the Ministry of Home Affairs, what I found was a deep respect and genuine, sincere liking and support of you, which I found
Some people have to support.
beautiful. I found it beautiful. And I just wanted, as we go along in this interview, whether or not you are misunderstood, to let you know that you are incredibly supported and respected by
you.
your staff. And to me, that speaks volumes, because I look for a boss that I would follow anywhere. And I need to work for a boss that I can respect. And your team feels that way about you. So I just felt that you needed to know that.
Thank you.
Now we go back to the
Yes.
questions. It is a daunting task, driving policy that affects the lives of everyday Singaporeans. And it's such a wide group. You've got people who are just making ends meet. You have people who have a lot of access. So when you're thinking about policy, how do you disconnect and just be K Shanmugam, the person? Do you ever truly disconnect from the job? Are you always pondering it at the back of your mind?
Let me put it to you this way. Let's say something happens at 2 a.m. at night.
Okay,
Do you think the Singapore public will accept if the Minister for Home Affairs is not available?
right.
Right? Recently, there was this big fire in Pulau Busing. It could have spread a huge amount. I went down. But let's distinguish between being accountable, responsible, as opposed to being 24/7.
Sure.
There are lots of people in Home Affairs, on the police side, on the civil defense side, on the CNB side, and the law enforcement officers, who are on the ground 24/7 and keeping watch all the time. Our ICA officers, for example. I'm not doing that, so let's not overstate. But if anything happens, I'm accountable, the buck stops with me. And if it's important enough, I have to be available. So there is a difference between having to do it 24/7 and having to be responsible, accountable 24/7. So that's one part of it. The second is, of course, is the huge ministry, and there is a law ministry, and then there is other government work. Most ministers, it's not just me, the typical schedule is such that most of your waking hours and quite a bit of your sleeping hours are taken up with work. So that's a different point.
You've given us a glimpse into a day in the life of a minister in a pictorial on your Instagram and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You come into the office, you've got two ministries, you've got your GRC work to do. You still go home and you still work at home in your home office.
As does everybody else, actually, including the senior civil servants. Yeah.
So what do you do when you push back? When you need a little, break?
Yeah. A few things. In the mornings, I try and have a little bit of time to just go to some quiet place, have a coffee, and then look at my emails. If I can, I try and schedule the meetings a bit later and try and get about an hour, 2 hours, where you can't have it just doing nothing, but have a quiet coffee, have a quiet breakfast, and then turn on your computer and without any disturbance, just look at it. But that's a little bit of me time. Work will come in, but you do your work without having to think of anything else. That's something I do. I try and spend some quiet time just stilling my thoughts where possible. I exercise. That I take quite seriously. So that's about it.
Okay. We'll talk more about the exercise and etc. a little bit later. I have noticed through your social media that you are very committed to meeting, spending time with your constituents in your GRC in Chong Pang. Why do you feel this is so important to you?
I was an backbench MP for 20 years before I became a minister. It's about 10 years now to the day. And over time, strong bonds and friendships have been developed in the constituency. I've been in the same constituency for 30 years. Pretty much they know me and I know them. And, people this is their lived reality. They're not in a business environment. They're not in an office environment. They're not doing business with me. They are in their lived reality, having their meals at their homes in the white deck downstairs. And there is an authenticity about that. And I actually enjoy interacting when I'm not too physically tired. I actually enjoy that most of the time. As I said, when I'm tired, then it's very difficult to get out of my shell.
Sure.
But most of the time, I enjoy that interaction, the linkage, I get, I think, as much as what I do on the ground. So there's a certain richness of texture to the interactions. And there is an authenticity to the interactions. So it's enriched my own life too.
I'm sure the constituents feel that way as well. We are talking to Minister K Shanmugam on Money FM 89.3. We come back with more questions and more answers in just a while. Here at Money FM 89.3, we are still talking to Minister K Shanmugam in our Coffee with Claressa special. Minister, you started talking about exercise and what to do when you take a little bit of a break. What do you do specifically? Are you into yoga or golf? Do you run? What do you do?
I don't golf.
You don't golf?
I don't golf. My exercises tend to be, trying to achieve the maximum possible in the shortest possible time. So I do high intensity training.
Okay.
I go on the cross trainer.
Okay.
And sometimes to loosen up the muscles, I do yoga.
Okay. Yeah. What kind of yoga?
Hatha yoga, sort of stretching, limbering, different poses.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this something you do every week?
I try to, twice a week. And mix other exercises on the other days.
And yoga does also help you feel more balanced, more emotionally balanced. Do you find that helps you?
Yoga helps, but to be emotionally balanced, you need to be clear about, why you are doing what you're doing.
Okay.
Not to be too affected by the consequences, and just to be clear in your conscience that what you're doing is right, at least that you believe it to be right, and to learn to cut off from having to worry about, what people think, except insofar as it's relevant to know what people think, so that, because your policies are designed to impact on people's lives to make it better.
Right.
If it doesn't, then you must be very quick to change.
Sure.
So that is important, but you shouldn't personally be affected by, say, either praise or criticism. That's what I mean. You got to learn to treat both at arm's length.
Right. Now, I think everyone in Singapore at some point has seen you with dogs.
Yes.
You have a soft spot for dogs. There's no denying that, right? And why would you? They are wonderful and they bring down your blood pressure and all those good things.
Absolutely.
But what is it about dogs for you?
I've had wanted to keep dogs for a long time, but through family circumstances, I couldn't until about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And, there's a certain authenticity about them. They require so little from you, and their love is very pure.
Yes.
And the bonding. Unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I would like. But you get a lot from dogs, just interacting with them, and their love and their affection. What you give, you get manyfold back.
Manyfold back, that's absolutely true. And you support a lot of adoption advocacy, rescue efforts, rehoming of dogs.
We have changed, I think, a lot in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah, in terms of policies. Yeah.
And that's wonderful. I have to say I support a lot of that. I live with rescue dogs myself.
Right.
And that's when I first met you at an adoption drive. So we know that you love dogs. Tell us about the dogs you now have.
That I now have.
That you now have.
Okay. I have a 4 rescued dogs. And we, within our capability, whatever, we come across dogs that need some help, we will take them. So we have one set of twins and one other dog which was abandoned in rather sort of unfortunate circumstances. The owner decided that he was going to leave and just left the dog.
Are you talking about Samson?
I'm talking about Samson. Just left him behind. Golden retriever.
He's a bit of an IG star right now.
Oh, yeah, Samson. He is, so he was just wandering around, and then my gardener found him in her place. Somebody had brought him and just left him there. So we took him. And then, another little mongrel whom we picked up sort of within, I think, a few weeks. He and his siblings had been very badly treated in workers' quarters. I think one of his siblings' paws had been cut off.
Oh, gosh.
So we call him Zorro. He is very twitchy, very sort of anxious dog. Wouldn't want to go for walks and so on. Can be aggressive. So these are the dogs we have now. But my first dog is, Bernard. I took him from Action for Singapore Dogs. And he is, I think, got a special place in my heart. He passed away sort of 2016 December.
Right.
He had to be put down. He was in a lot of pain. But for a mongrel, he was 15, 16 years old. So he was a special star.
A special star because he was your first?
First, and he was a sort of top dog, aggressive, and at the same time, because he had been very badly treated, he had been abused for 5 years. I think maybe 2 years, before when he was rescued. So he was very wary of strangers. But he had a certain regal outlook, and he would be commanding, sitting there, and everyone would pay respect him. I saw him and said, this chap is something. Yeah.
Well, the connection, why it's hard to explain. Why do you choose to take one home or try to make more room in your place, even if you don't have it? I think a lot of the time they choose us, and we just go with it.
In the case of Bernard and Dingo, who came with him, there was a family that was downsizing, moving to an apartment. And I asked a friend, that dog's available. They said, if you didn't take them, did you mind mongrels? Do you mind? I said, no, I don't mind. So because they're not going to be rehomed because people don't take mongrels. This was like 15 years ago.
Sure.
And they were too big to be kept in an apartment. And would you mind? That's how I came. So I came on them.
Okay. You go to a lot of adoption drives and things like to support.
Yeah.
How often do people try to get you to adopt more?
Frequently, but I think they also know I have several. They may not know whether it's 4 or 5. And they know that I've said, look, and they understand I'm busy. My wife is busy. There is a limit. You can adopt, but you've got to be responsible too.
Sure.
And which means you must look after. And if you keep adopting and no one is looking after, that's also not right.
True.
Not fair.
That's true.
So I think, in these drives, the people are knowledgeable. So when you explain, they understand.
Okay. Now, we know that you love dogs. How do you feel about cats?
Okay, I have never had much interaction with cats. I'll give you one illustration that is always etched in my mind. I talked about Bernard. In my previous home, Bernard, when he can be on his belly, will never be on his legs. And he always likes lying down and closing his eyes. But quite alert. So he had been bullying the neighbor's cat. Whenever the neighbor's cat would come over, it would be chased out.
Right.
So the neighbor's cat, quite a very smart cat, waited until one day when Bernard was near a pillar. Bernard was near a pillar and lying down, closing his eyes. The cat came over from the neighbor's house on the roof, came down the pillar, gave Bernard a nice big scratch on his nose, and ran back up. So you can tell, these cats are pretty smart.
Yes, pretty smart.
We, always had so many dogs. Think didn't move on to cats.
Right, okay. Cats do, they're a completely different personality. I have both. I have cats in my
Yes.
house as well.
Right.
Okay, we go back to how busy you are on an average day. What relaxes you after the end of the day? Do you like good food? Do you sit down and listen to music? A good glass of wine, maybe? What are the guilty pleasures
the
like that?
answer is going to be very boring. I don't drink.
Okay, you don't drink.
I don't drink because, contrary to the experience of most people, if I drink, I can't sleep.
Okay.
So I don't take any alcohol.
Okay.
I might give a toast at an official ceremony, but other than that, I don't drink. I don't have time for music at night.
Okay.
So you go home. There are earlier days and there are later days. Later days, all you want to do is shower and get to bed.
Okay.
After quickly looking at the screen to see whether there are any new emails that you need to clear. Earlier days, you go home, you try and get some exercise in. Quick dinner. I don't eat much at night. I try and take a soup, a salad, or something light. Not a heavy meal at night.
Okay.
And then the rest of the evening is spent on clearing emails. And then I try and have about half an hour of time between turning off the screen and going to bed, because otherwise it affects your sleep.
Sure.
And that half an hour is spent usually in just trying to quieten the mind. So I'm afraid, and I don't think my routine is very different from that of most of the senior civil servants or ministers or others we interact with, because we're all emailing each other at that time of the night.
Okay, this is the Eurasian girl in me, so you'll have to forgive me. Can you cook, or would the fire department be deployed?
I can't cook, is the honest answer. I used to for a year when I was away, living away, working away for a year. That's more than 30 years ago.
Okay.
But, it was very much a recipe book cooking.
Right.
I've long since given up.
Okay. You leave it to the experts?
I leave it to the experts.
All right. Now, everyone, this is a big question for me because it speaks volumes about the person. Everyone has a place they hold very dear to their hearts. It's a place they find serenity. What's yours?
A quiet place of nature, next to the sea, beach. That's what I would really like. That's what I like doing. My holidays, I like to spend time by the beach and in the sea. But on a regular basis, you're not going to get that.
Sure.
On a regular basis, what I do like is to be away from the office, say in the mornings if possible, to take an hour, 2 hours. You still have to do your work, but you do your work in a different setting, in a quiet setting, in a cafe somewhere, have a coffee and do your work. That probably is my quote-unquote downtime.
Okay. If there is one takeaway from this interview you would like Singaporeans, our listeners, to have about you, what would you like it to be?
Well, about me, I don't care very much. But I think what I would like them to take away is about themselves and the country.
Okay.
I think it's critical for Singaporeans to understand we are in a 762 square kilometer island. It's a small boat in a big sea. All the other boats are much bigger. What kind of lives do they want? What kind of competition are they going to face from everyone else? How do they make it work? It's the next generation's task.
Right.
And it's for the people to make it work. That is something that I think every Singaporean has got to remember.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. K Shanmugam. It has been a real pleasure to talk to you this afternoon. And I will say this on air for the record, I am a fan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to
and
Money
your mother
FM.
too.
My mother too.
Yeah.
Yes, good-looking fella, she
Okay,
said
thank
about you.
Yeah. Thank
You're
you.
on Money FM 89.3. Minister, this is my, Oshan, this is my producer, Catherine Roberts. She has one question for you.
I have
Yes,
one
ma'am.
very important question. Okay, so I'm a big fan of you, but I'm not a very big fan of the club that I hear you support. Would that be Arsenal?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I'm a Spurs fan, so we are North London rivals.
Right.
And so, what do you think of the club? How are they doing this season?
Well, Catherine, once in a while, Arsenal has to let Tottenham go up a bit. Once every 50 years or so. Yeah.
Okay, taken. That is true. We don't have very many trophies, so he's not wrong.
And how do you feel about Arsene Wenger leaving Arsenal now?
He's changed the way Arsenal played. That I think Arsene Wenger is the reason why Arsenal has so many fans around the world. It's a style of the club, the play. But in the end, people want trophies. They want you to win big championships. And I think probably the sense amongst many is that Arsenal has gone as far as they can with Wenger. Wenger has done a great job. And it's good to go when people still hold you in very high regard.
Right.
I think so. That's the moment that he has chosen, though he has indicated that it may not have been entirely his choice.
Sure.
And Arsenal is at a place where the club has a great reputation. It's got a great name. Players will want to come, I think. So they've got to find the right manager. And if they do, then the club will have a great future.
Okay. There. All the Arsenal football fans, that one was for you.